Isn't it amazing? And you are all so sure. Fear not, my fellow Americans, this is the year 2010. Hope and change, baby. So it's out with the old propaganda and in with the new. Welcome to New School, or the latest misguided campaign against childhood obesity. Now, New School is an interesting thing, as the school itself is divided into two separate schools of thought. School number one, which is based on sane, rational thinking. Then we have the other school of thought, school number two, which makes no sense whatsoever. Essentially, New School number one says our childhood as well as our adult obesity problem is not necessarily the result of eating too many cheesy doodles or fast foods, but is in fact a product of eating processed foods, or those foods loaded with preservatives and flavorings like sodium and trans fats. Unlike old school, which was really nothing more than bailing water with a spoon and keeping a towel handy for when you couldn't keep up, New School actually holds some water. The problem is, it only holds so much water. Oh boy. Although New School number one definitely has merit, it's really nothing more than a new and improved variation of old school thinking. Quite simply because its focus is once again on what we are consuming instead of what we're doing with what we consume. Let's put it this way. How many minutes a day do we actually spend eating? Not the time spent sitting at the table waiting for our order to arrive, or the 25 seconds of conversation between the next potato chip or slurp of pop. Let's be incredibly generous and say on average, we spend an hour and a half a day actually consuming something. Now, let's go further. 2 hours, which is a lot of consuming. That being said, what are we doing with the other 22 hours of the day? Okay, enough with New School number one. It has merit, but is incredibly incomplete and only addresses a portion of the problem. Let's take a quick look at the second school of New School obesity thinking. Now, when I say quick, I mean quick, because if we spend too much time here, the psychological ramifications could be horrible. Not to mention the fact that over the next 6 months or so, this is all you're going to hear about from the media. Aside from fancy logos, exciting catchphrases, celebrity endorsements, and enough political power to push nonsense ideas and legislation, New School number two is nothing short of a nightmare. Once again, food is the main culprit, but New School number two adds a few unique twists. You see, it's not our fault we have weight management problems. We've been victimized. We've been forced to unknowingly eat foods tainted with preservatives, high in sugars, fats, and sodium. We've been caught in the trap of marketing and captivated by the neat, fun packaging, which has resulted in the inability of parents across America to say no. You know, there's another thing. Our schools have been feeding our kids slop. But it's all cool now because we got together and had a big meeting with a bunch of chefs, and we came up with the Healthier U.S. Schools Challenge program, which establishes rigorous standards for schools' food quality, participation in meal programs, physical activity, and nutrition education. This program is not hollow rhetoric. In fact, we're going to change 1,000 schools a year. Forget the fact that school districts across America are facing massive budget cuts and increased classroom sizes. Together and from sea to shining sea, we're going to fundamentally change every school cafeteria in America. But that's not all of it. There's still two more components to the new Hope and Change obesity strategy. 1, increased physical activity, and 2, nutrition education. Let's do nutrition education first because that's the easiest. Basically, that equates to more time sitting stagnant in a classroom somewhere, learning something your state learning standards already require you to learn. But here's the real kicker. Nutrition education generally falls under health education, and health education is usually taught during physical education time, which completely goes against the last component of the Hope and Change obesity strategy, which is increased physical activity. Hard to get physical activity when your one and only hour of physical education in a 35-hour-a-week school week is replaced with seated nutrition education. So what does that mean? Well, unless you're going to provide kids with more physical education, or even allow a daily outside recess, more physical activity equates to more of the same fitness initiatives, park district, and after-school programs on top of the ones we already have. Of course, these new programs have to be funded, but I'm sure you won't mind paying more taxes for more of the same failing stuff. And that's it. That's everything we've been offered in the fight against childhood obesity. Were you able to look beyond the obvious? You ready for the truth? You can handle the truth. Part 2.